Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 210th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We are holding by Parshas Mishpatim. Parshas Mishpatim, the longest parsha in the Torah, meaning how many mitzvahs are given. The longest parsha is Parshas Nasa, right, in the book of Numbers, 176 verses. Here it's the most amount of mitzvahs that are given in one parsha. And these, a lot of them have to do with the laws of damages. Talks about civil law, talks about slavery, murder and manslaughter, right? Talks about animal damaging property, self-defense, damages by livestock, someone who borrows, right? What their obligations are, judicial process, a lot of things, right? A lot of things that have to do with the laws of damages. Right, comes on the Torah chapter 24 verse 5. And when the Torah is going to tell us that the Jewish people say, Naaseh v'nishma, we will hear, then we will do. Sorry, not we will do, then we will hear. Right, got it backwards there. That they're not interested in what the Torah has to say. They're going to keep whatever God says, regardless of what what God's going to tell them. And then Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to the mountain for a 6-day period, etc. But the Torah there says, again, book of Exodus chapter 24 verse 5, Torah tells me that Moshe sent use, that's going to be the topic over here, he sent use of the children of Israel, and they brought up burnt offerings. They slaughtered bulls to Hashem as feast, peace offerings to Hashem. Right? So we sent use over here. So what exactly does it mean? Does it really mean that he sent young children? Right? The Talmud tells me that when the non-Jews, when Ptolemy HaMelech, Ptolemy the king, wanted the Jews to translate the Torah into Greek, so he sent 72 scholars, 72 rabbis in different places, and they came up with the exact translation. Right? The exact translation, each one, that was pretty miraculous, but it was a very sad day, the fact that the Torah was translated into Greek. So there, what does the Talmud tell me? The Talmud explains this verse, right? And it says the use of the children of Israel. Right? What is the Aramaic translation? The Aramaic translation is Zatute B'nai Yisrael. What does it mean, Zatute? Zatute. Rashi explains it's a language of importance. Chashivas didn't just mean the use, but it meant these were people of importance. But normally, what would we say? Normally, we would say when it says use, it says young kids. That's what it means. Right? That's 100% what it means. We're going to take it literally. Right? The Karaites will be happy over here. That what are the non-Jews going to say? So who did they send? Who did Moshe Rabbeinu send over there? He sent young kids. He sent young kids in order to hear what God's going to say. Right? It's a little bit strange. Right? It'd be one thing, you're going to send me adults. You're going to send me rabbinic scholars. You're going to send me people been sitting here learning for years and years. Why in the world over here you're going to send the youth? Why send the youth? Rashi explains, doesn't really mean youth. It means people of importance. Right? That would seem to be what it means, but we can take it literally. That Moshe Rabbeinu himself is sending young people. He's sending young people over here. So it says, Mor v'Rebbe, Arav Agon, Ramoshe Star Moshlita, should be well. And it brings down in Chochmah V'das, in its commentary on Chumash, And he explains what do the non-Jews think over here? That non-Jews in general, they themselves don't see themselves as bound by Torah. They're not bound by ethics. Right? They think what? Eat, drink, and be merry, lest tomorrow I'm die. Right? That tomorrow they'll die. So therefore, what are they in this world for? Fame! They're here for fame, to enjoy. Right? To enjoy this world. And that it's a world of being ownerless. What we call a world of hefkeris. And are they interested in spirituality? Certainly not. Right? They're not interested in sacrificing themselves. Meaning working hard to understand God's law. Working hard to be better people. Right? In spiritual terms. And therefore, what do they want? They want to be left alone. They want to enjoy this world. They want to be not held accountable for anything. They want to make a lot of money. They don't want to work. Right? All these good things. So the reality is that if you have these bums, my language, these good for nothings, you really want them to bring sacrifices? That makes sense. What do these people want? They just want to have fun. That's all they want. They want to enjoy life. No heaviness. Right? They want to enjoy things. They don't have to think about things. They just want to have a good time. So, what are the non-Jews going to think? What in the world do you have young people, children, bringing sacrifices? Why in the world will we do that? So Rebbe here says, that's the difference between Jewish youth and non-Jewish youth. Jewish youth, they're educated properly in school, in Jewish schools, learning Torah, learning about how God runs the world, learning about mitzvahs. So what are they busy doing? They're busy striving for excellence in spirituality. They're not interested in what goes on in the street, or they shouldn't be. The streets should not have any sway. Because it's all about frivolousness. It's all about promiscuity. It's all about having no morals at all. It's about letting me do what I want. It's about enjoying life. But our kids, they're learning day in and day out how to draw close to God, how to perform mitzvahs, how to keep Shabbos, how to stay in the right path. So the non-Jews, they can't understand. For them, this doesn't make any sense. And therefore, you have to change it a little bit. You can't say, well, it's just the young over here. It means people are important. Right, but for us, even the children that are going to bring these sacrifices, the Torah looks even better. The Torah looks even better because they're striving in Torah. They're working hard in mitzvahs. They're working hard on themselves. No, not easy in this generation to teach kids. Every generation has their particular evil inclination. Way back when, It was about communism, socialism, democracy. Today, it's all about pleasure. It's all what the Greeks say. Worship the body. Morality goes out the window. People just want to enjoy. They want to relax. They want to have fun. It'll come at a price. Because the Torah says you go against it, you'll pay a price. You'll pay a severe price. So this is the major difference, or one of the major differences between Jews and non-Jews. Non-Jews, the vast majority, very cynical about religion in general. Now they're going out of their minds because you can't really go to sporting events. Okay, now you can start to watch them. But they want to be entertained. They don't want to have to think. They just want to enjoy life. And that's how they're born and bred. Some will have better values. Some will have worse values. But the values are not coming from Torah. The values are coming from whatever they think. Whatever's going on during that time. They're not steeped in holiness. Because even to educate kids in holiness is hard. Pull of the street is very strong. And we have to get them to understand that the fundamental issues in Torah and what we have to do are about obligation. And not just, well, if you don't keep it, you're going to fry it out forever. People aren't going to want to keep it that way. They have to know what to do. They have to know what the repercussions are. But you got to give them enjoyment also. And there are a lot of people, unfortunately, that go off and veer off because they never enjoyed. It was all about doom and gloom. It was all about do it or you're going to fry. Who wants to learn? If learning is hard, who wants to learn if it's all about that? What about the sweetness of Torah? What about my ability to understand? To look at the bigger picture. To see, as the Bible says, look into the world. Understand God's greatness, how much fun it is to sit in the sukkah. To play dreidel. Light the Hanukkah menorah. Shabbos. If it's looked at as being dreadful, if it's looked at as, well, keep it or die, that's not so enjoyable. That definitely doesn't sound so enjoyable. We have to know what to do. We certainly have to know, and kids have to learn at a young age, there are repercussions for what you do. Right? We have to discipline them. People are afraid to discipline today. You know, because what could a kid come up and say? Oh, you want to discipline me? You want to take this away? Well, watch me. I'm going to go off to Derek. Right? I'm going to stray. Well, what kind of threat is that? They're going to pay the price if they do. But the parent has to be like the Rock of Gibraltar. Regardless of what your kid comes with. You got to be ready. You got to be prepared. Because the reality is they want discipline. They don't want to just do whatever they want. It says King Solomon in Proverbs, if you spare the rod, you consider it cruel. Sparing the rod does not mean hitting. Hitting doesn't work today. Sparing the rod means you have to discipline. We can't be afraid to discipline. Kids have to know there are boundaries, that there are limits, that they can't just do whatever they want. But their life is totally different. Take a secular kid goes to public school. Right? A secular Jew or non-Jew. Guaranteed they're getting skewed values from their peers and what they do. Contradictions left and right. Do as I say, not as I do. Right? Famous example, Bertrand Russell being very unethical, teaching ethics. And the students asked him, if you're so unethical, how can you teach ethics? And he said, if I taught mathematics, you expect me to be a square? Judaism says no. That behavior is wrong. Across the board, it's wrong. We do not compartmentalize. Right? With Aristotle, famous womanizer. Students caught him once. He said, Aristotle, what are you doing? He says, Aristotle, the philosopher. This is Aristotle, the womanizer. We don't compartmentalize. We nip it in the bud and say that is wrong. There is no compartmentalization. Either what we do is right or wrong. We're not parv or neutral like Switzerland. We have to do what God says to the best of our ability. We have an evil inclination, true. We may fail at many things, true. But it doesn't matter. My obligation is to be the best I can be. My obligation is to educate my kids the best way they can be. But if they're not taught ethics, they're not taught what the Torah stands for, how are they ever going to know? What's going to guide them? Imagine being on a boat, on a sailboat, no motor, and the rudder goes overboard. Where does the sailboat go? Round and around and around and around. No anchor over here, no pun intended. Nothing to guide it. Our life is no different. Our life has to be guided by Torah mitzvahs. It's much harder to learn it when you're older, because you're already set in your ways. Very, very hard. But the reality is, you got to start somewhere. For us, we start when they're young. When they learn how to speak, what's the first thing we teach them? Torah tziva lanu Moshe. God commanded Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu gave us the Torah. Teach them how to make blessings. Teach them what mitzvahs are at their level. And then they grow. But it has to be reinforced. If it's not reinforced, then what's the point? Kid's going to see contradiction. Had somebody once tell me, comes home from school, comes home from yeshiva, father's sitting up reading the newspaper. He says, you got to review, you got to learn. Well, Dad, what are you doing? You're reading the newspaper, watching TV. I.e., do as I say, not as I do. Isn't that a contradiction? Isn't that a mixed message? Absolutely. Is the kid going to see it? Kid will see it. Kid will see it clear as day. So really, the role models are the parents. Even though they're in school most of the day, nonetheless, the real values come from home. School's a reinforcement. But for better or for worse, they're going to learn the most from home. So we have to educate them properly. We have to be role models for them. Whether we like it or not, we are the role models. So we're our own worst enemy. Kids don't always understand when a parent says something, when a parent does something. But it is important, if they wrong them, to apologize. The kid will be better off for it, because they'll understand. Parent, can make mistakes. They can make mistakes. But the difference is, they have to know what it is. They have to know and understand Torah. They have to be taught from a young age. If you give them a half-baked education, Jewish education, they'll come out half-baked. Will they come out keeping anything? Probably not. Very little. Now you say, well, isn't in the Orthodox communities a dropout rate? Yes, there is. Let's say it's at 6%. It's still too high. But let's say there's an issue. There are issues. But if you tell me 95% of the time it works, there's a reason. Right? The main reason is they don't see inconsistencies. Parents keep, siblings keep, the teachers are exemplary. So it's real to them. It's not just a bunch of fairy tales. Not just, well, you feel like doing it, you don't feel like doing it, whatever you want. And what's your kid going to turn out? He's going to marry. Most likely. 60, 70% chance. Those are what the statistics are. Destroying, decimating Judaism today. So the only hope is through Jewish education. Proper Jewish education. And it's never too late. A person can always change. The problem is, the more we're steeped in the garbage, that's where we end up. Torah mitzvahs will never be real, will never be able to be passed down to the next generation if the parents themselves don't believe in it. If the teachers teaching them don't believe in it. If it's not made real, if it's not made for them to understand that they're responsible for what they do. There is a God, He runs the world. But the heritage, the Jewish heritage is deep. It's unbelievably deep. But people throw it away for nothing. Doesn't fit my world outlook. Who cares what your world outlook is? Is the Torah true? Did God give it or not? Or is it make-believe? Is it fantasy? If kids see from their parents it's fantasy, what are they going to think? Are they going to think it's the real deal? Nope. Not even close. They'll never think it's real. And they'll flush it down the toilet. That's what they'll do. They won't keep anything. God says this is forever. Right? The Torah says it's got to be passed down. And if it's passed down right, it works. If it's passed down in a cracked way, my language, in a cracked, in a crooked, in a skewed way, it doesn't work. Right? So the people will say, I can believe what I want. Can I force anyone to believe like me? Nope. Can I make them drink the Kool-Aid? Nope. They have to see it for themselves. They have to look into it for themselves. The vast majority of people don't do that. Because it's not about truth. For them, it's about, okay, you have your opinion. Very good. You want to raise your family that way? Your choice. But at the end of the day, we all have to ask ourselves, what does God want from me? What's my purpose in the world? as a Jew or as a non-Jew. Does God, is the Torah really true? Or is it fantasy? If you can prove it's fantasy, you don't have to keep it. Let's see. But maybe there is truth. Right? Maybe there is something to it. And see now all the other so-called Jewish movements out there, they're all dying. Every last one of them. So we see from a practical standpoint, through intermarriage assimilation, it doesn't work. So if you tell me, I believe like this, I believe like that, doesn't work. Can it be passed down? And if it can't, what do I care what your philosophy is? Your philosophy is irrelevant. Because it doesn't work. Well, who says it's supposed to work? The Torah does. The Torah makes clear it's supposed to be forever. Many, many times. If it says it's forever, we'll be Karaites. It means forever. It's not supposed to die. You're not supposed to just put in you put in a little bit of effort. Okay, it didn't work out. Jews will disappear. Okay. That's not what it's supposed to be. Yesh din v'yesh dayin. There's judgment. There's a judge. There's a right way. There's a wrong way. Right? The people may say, well, that's your opinion. Yeah, I got 3,000 years to back it up. I got the book that God gave us through Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? He passed down to us. We have oral law to understand what it means. But if someone wants to come and say, I beg to differ, and I'm going to do what I want, and I'm going to pick and choose, okay. Person can do that. Again, if it doesn't work, it doesn't really matter. Right? They can't pass it down, so who cares what they do? But I would say, for argument's sake, that it has to work. It has to be passed down. And even if a person wants to do what they want, I'm just going to be like this. How come they don't look at the other side? Because they're not arguing and saying what you're saying isn't true. They're just saying, I want to do what I want. Well, if you're in a debating team, you get an F. That's not how you answer. You got to answer with proof. You got to answer with sources. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't care. And therefore, what are they going to tell you? They're going to tell you exactly that. You want to do what you want to do, okay? I'll do what I want to do, and that's also okay. Right? And you got to be okay with that. And who says? Who says I have to sit back and say that's okay? Lest we leave our brains open till they fall on the floor. Who says? If a person wants to have a certain lifestyle, show me. Show me where the Torah isn't true. Show me where the facts are. Not by what I want to do. Because what I want to do is irrelevant. Right? God gave us a book. As we mentioned before, passed it down to Moshe. Moshe passed it down to us. We are a link in the chain that goes back 3,000 years to Mount Sinai. All that being true, what do I want for the next generation? Fantasy? Or do I want the Word of God that works? That can actually pass down? That my kids will go in that direction? Because that's the only thing we have left. That is the only thing that works. So I want to remind everyone, I have a class on duties of the heart every Tuesday, 9 o'clock New York time. I do 2 Q&As every Tuesday, Thursday, 10 o'clock New York time, 5 o'clock Israel time. I also do Tanakh Talk every Monday, 2 o'clock Eastern time. 9 o'clock Israel time on controversial issues. It's Pirkei Avos every Saturday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock Israel time. Ethics of our fathers. And if a conversion class is anyone interested in any of this, you can find me on Facebook, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkoffman@gmail.com. RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com.